Thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring today's video. From websites and online stores, Squarespace is the all-in-one platform to build a beautiful online presence. Hello friends and happy 2025. I hope that you are well. We are kicking off the new year with a new theme for the monthly postcard and sticker club. And originally I was going to do the theme witches, but I now have landed on the theme of magic so that it was a little bit broader and gave me more flexibility on what I could do with it. So it was really refreshing to do traditional thumbnail sketches for once, and I am also finally going to be able to paint on wood panels again, which I've really missed. And I decided to sketch directly onto the wood panel rather than my usual process of sketching digitally and then printing the sketch and tracing it onto the painting surface. As for the inspiration for this piece, I originally had the idea of using some kind of teardrop motif because I have these like crystal teardrops that I used to use in a lot of my wood panel paintings, but I decided to go in the direction of something more celestial with stars because, again, the theme is magic. And I kept thinking about the scene in Howl's Moving Castle, He Who Swallowed a Falling Star. I just think that scene is so beautiful and I really love the colors and the motif of it. And of course, I didn't want it to be a direct copy. And because I was, thinking about how I originally wanted to do those big teardrops in the illustration, I decided to go with the teardrops instead being bursts of stars. It feels much more optimistic and, lighthearted going into the new year. And then much like the Howl's Moving Castle scene, I wanted to have a central star so that I could have these kind of bursts of energy surging through the piece from the center of the figure. And that ended up really reminding me of the transformation sequence in Sailor Moon, which again kind of harkens back to the theme of magic. So it ended up being a very serendipitous kind of blend of references. But before we continue, thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring today's video. As an illustrator, having a professional platform to display my best work is essential. And since we're now in 2025, I figured it was finally time to freshen up my gallery. As you can see, you don't need to know any code to quickly update and rearrange your images. This literally took me minutes. And another great feature you can have is having a gallery within a gallery, which is perfect for me since I like to display my illustration series grouped together to keep things organized. And I love that you can even edit your images directly on the platform, which makes the process so streamlined. Whether it be a gallery, online shop, blog, or all of the above, Squarespace has got you covered. So if you're interested in launching your own website, head over to squarespace.com for a free trial. And when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/I'mAWonder for 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Now let's start officially painting. So I'm going to be using primarily acrylic gouache, and then I'll be using some paint markers as well. All of the items that I'm using in this video will be listed in the description down below. And as you may have guessed, I am going to be discussing my art goals for 2025. Normally, I tend to skip over doing New Year's resolutions. I find that it just puts a lot of unnecessary pressure on yourself. And I find that year after year, I would just be really disappointed in myself at the end of the year because I have a really hard time committing to a lot of these goals that I would make at the beginning of the year. So I decided that I would just stick to doing art goals that I think were broad enough that felt doable. And I decided to finally do this because one, it had been a couple of years since I'd done it. And two, when I was just reflecting on my year of 2024, I just felt like I was a little lost, I think. I don't feel like I accomplished as much as I could have. And so this year I want to change that. And I just want to have a rough outline to kind of give myself a due north, so to speak, just to give myself a sense of direction. So art goal number 1 is to fall back in love with art. This is something that is probably the priority because when I reflect on the past couple of years and when I look at my body of work, I just don't feel very satisfied with it. And I really had a hard time being proud of the work that I was producing because, yeah, like I technically made a lot of, I did make a fair amount, I should say. Not a lot, I made a fair amount of finished illustrations. But whenever someone would ask me, oh, like, when are you planning to make an art book or are you going to make an art book? I never felt confident in doing so because I just didn't feel like the body of work that I've made up until this point, I didn't feel like there was enough that I was like, oh yeah, I absolutely feel confident in displaying this collection of work in a published book. And I really want to change that. And I think a lot of it comes down to my taste and my art style just like not matching up, but also not feeling the joy of making art anymore. Because when you turn your passion, your hobby into your career, your relationship with it changes a lot. There's a lot of deadlines that you have to meet. There's a lot of external kind of factors that you don't normally have with your artwork prior to making it your job. There's a lot of pressure on it. And so I felt like I was just sort of going through the motions, but I found it really hard to stay engaged with the process. And I often would feel like I was kind of dreading it, or I just wasn't like, I wasn't having fun. And I think that is so important to maintain, especially because I want to continue being an artist full time. So I need to make sure that I am recapturing the love that I have for it, because otherwise, what's the point in choosing this as a career? And how I want to kind of go about this is 1, experimenting more again, and 2, loosening up. So this video is actually the perfect example of me actually implementing those things. Like at the beginning, I did traditional thumbnails just with a ballpoint pen and a highlighter, and then I sketched directly on the wood panel. I didn't even plan the colors. Normally I do that digitally, and then I end up just comparing the digital version to the traditional version, and I think that created a huge disparity in how I felt about the piece, because it's impossible to get the colors to look exactly the same as it did digitally when you're painting with actual paint. And so just sort of jumping into this allowed me to have a little sense of freedom, and also, there's no comparison really, minus the little thumbnail sketch. But because the comparison isn't so direct, it felt really liberating. And I think that even though I have been painting with acrylic gouache all year last year, painting with it on the wood panel just felt different, and it was really refreshing. And of course, experimenting with the actual art style as well. I think that with the Zodiac portrait series last year, I had kind of boxed myself in to a very specific look. And so with the theme of magic this year, I'm really leaving it much more open. And so I can experiment a lot more. And so you can see with this illustration, it's much more stylized and simplified in the kind of shapes and kind of direction that I've taken with it. And I'm happy to say that I actually quite like how this one turned out, and generally had a fun time working on it as well. So I think I'm already, hopefully, going in the right direction. My second art goal is to make more merchandise. So as of right now, I primarily have original art, prints, stickers. I have a few keychains, and I have some zines, and then I have a zippered pouch. I think that's pretty much the extent of what I offer at the moment. And when I think about me as a consumer, as much as I love prints and I love having zines and like illustrative work, I only have so many spaces on my walls to display prints. And much like myself as a consumer, I'm thinking about you guys as consumers of my work. And I recognize that it's beneficial for all of us for me to carry a wider array of things. And so I really want to expand what I offer. I'm probably going to end up doing different types of work as well. Like I was mentioning earlier with wanting to experiment with my art style, I definitely think that certain types of merchandise will lend itself to different types of styles. And so I think I will probably end up dipping my toe into digital art a lot more and leaning into being more design forward as opposed to everything being super rendered and illustrative, because things like t-shirts or tote bags or enamel pins, like those kinds of things, it is beneficial to go more simple and more designed as opposed to the typical kind of artwork that I make. So that's something that I'm looking forward to kind of dipping my toe into more. And yeah, just like putting more energy into my online shop and artist alleys. I really have been trying to apply to more artist alleys for 2025, but unfortunately it's looking kind of rough out here because I keep getting rejected or waitlisted. I think that the artist alley scene right now is extremely competitive, and so hopefully I'll be able to see you guys in person at a few more locations, but it's up in the air right now. But yeah, I really love doing artist alleys. I think it's so fun to be in those kinds of spaces. And also, of course, being able to interact with you in person, but also reach a new audience that I might not have reached before. Because the thing about social media is that, of course, you are able to hit internationally and reach an audience that you normally wouldn't have. But I also think that for me, I think that my audience is primarily other artists. And while I love that, I do think that it's really crucial to also hit a demographic of people who might not necessarily be artists themselves as well. And I think that in order to hit that demographic, going to artist alleys is kind of the perfect place, because you're just getting random foot traffic of people who are there for other reasons as well as being in the artist alley. And so you end up actually engaging with a lot of people who don't know your artwork at all. Whereas my online shop, I'm only able to make sales to people who find me on social media. And a lot of those people end up being other artists. So yeah, just wanting to, lean into widening my horizons, I suppose. For my third art goal, I want to lean more into branding. This definitely ties in a lot to the second goal. And it's funny because I actually went to school for graphic design. That's what I did during college. And when I decided to make illustration and art my full-time career, I kind of assumed that while yes, graphic design would play a role, I didn't really lean into it in the way that I should have. Obviously, I'm going to change that going into this year, but basically, I'm realizing how important it is to have a brand identity, even though I'm not like a quote unquote company. I think I got into this mindset that having a clear brand, such as a logo and things like that, were reserved for corporations. And I'm learning, especially from doing artist alleys, seeing the importance of having a very clear brand identity and having signage and a cohesion across all of your social media platforms. And so I can finally actually put my graphic design background to real use. And so I really want to try and design myself a logo and have banners that have a consistent kind of theme or design identity and be able to have really nice signage when I do in-person events. And yeah, just be a lot more intentional about those things, because while I would love for just my artwork to speak for itself, I definitely think that having a clear aesthetic is also really important. What really set me off in this kind of train of thought was when I was doing a convention and someone came to my booth and they looked at my artwork and then asked me, "Are you I'm a Wonder?" And that to me signaled that, one, they did recognize my work, but it wasn't clear because I didn't have a sign that explicitly said that I'm a Wonder. And so that sort of set off this kind of idea that having clear branding will enhance the customer, and it's only going to boost your artwork. It's going to frame and highlight your artwork better. And for my fourth and final art goal, it is to be unapologetic. This kind of correlates to life in general as well, not just art. But basically what kind of kickstarted this was earlier last year, I was sort of just thinking out loud to my friend, and I was expressing that I was really disappointed in myself because I was losing followers on my social media platforms. And I was just saying this out loud just to vent. And she just said, "Oh, maybe it's because you post K-pop now." And I was devastated when she said that, because as some of you might know, I have fallen down the K-pop rabbit hole, and it's something that brings me a lot of joy. And thus I have been making K-pop related fan art, and I post about it in my stories. And the idea that something that I was so excited and passionate about was potentially driving people away from my social media made me really, really sad. And so I think I ended up spending a lot of time really trying to find ways to please everybody. And like I mentioned earlier, when you have this sort of external factor of a following, it changes your approach to your art. And so I think that it made me self-conscious about posting certain things or making art about certain things, because I didn't want to exclude somebody if they weren't also interested in this thing that I was posting about. However, I realized that I'm doing myself a disservice by trying to fit a box that is completely imaginary at this point, because who am I trying to please? So ultimately, I have come to the conclusion that rather than trying to keep followers who have decided that my work doesn't serve them anymore, it's better for me to focus on making the work that I truly want to make and hopefully attracting new followers that align with the current interests and things that I'm posting about. A lot like the first goal that I had, which was falling in love with art, it really made me reflect on kind of my whole journey. And what got me started was literally posting fan art on the internet. That's where my love of art began. And I've always been this way. I've always loved posting a variety of content, whether it be original artwork, leaning into fandoms, or lifestyle content, and just like posting silly things. And so rather than stressing about, oh, if I post this type of content, is that going to bother this group of people? If I post this type of content, does that mean I'm going to lose followers? That's not the mindset that I want to have anymore. I want to just post the things that I want to post, just regardless. And hopefully that resonates with the audience that was meant for me. And in turn, I think that just builds a more bonded and authentic community, and that's exactly what I want. And with that, those are all of my art goals for 2025. Let me know in the comments down below if you have made any art goals or New Year's intentions. Doesn't have to be art related. And if you're interested in joining my postcard and sticker reward club, worldwide shipping is included, but I also have a $5 tier if you want access to exclusive videos, access to my secret shop, discount codes, and more. Check the Patreon link down below. I hope you have an amazing day or evening wherever you're at, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!